the Z-Locked Challenge. The rules are simple. We're not allowed to turn by traditional means. Every single room is an entirely new puzzle to overcome. Can you beat The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time while Z-Locked? Hey there friendos, Newbornkilik here, welcoming you back to another Z-Locked challenge. Last time we watched Phantom Ganon be banished to the gap between dimensions. Wow, that's dark. But we get the Force Medallion. Now we make our way to the Water Temple, which, as you may likely anticipate, will end up being a very fun and not frustrating at all area in this challenge. I'm only kind of serious because underwater mechanics are actually a lot different than anything else we've faced so far. Luckily, we don't have to head there right away, as we actually have a few things we need to do before we can even get to the Water Temple, namely heading back to the Ice Cavern to grab the Iron Boots. Making our way back through Zora's River, which I should say isn't exactly trivial, then again, what is in this challenge? But a pretty big sticking point was yet to come in actually getting to Ice Cavern, so I thought. I mean, just look at this scene and tell me this doesn't look like the most annoying thing on the planet. Alright, I mean, there's that, but that's a problem for future Newbornkilik. Luckily, as it would turn out, the rotating ice platforms are pretty much a non-factor due to a strange little quirk in the way the Ocarina of Time handles rotating platforms. For whatever reason, you're not affected by rotating platforms while Z-Locked, meaning that you'll just kind of face in the same direction, even though the platform below your feet is rotating. It's a small quirk that doesn't really have too much impact on the run, but I think it's interesting nonetheless. Moving ourselves into the Ice Cavern can be a bit more challenging, and by that I mean it's a huge pain in the ass. I know that it's hard to convey how difficult some of these parts are because even the simplest room is roughly twice as difficult as it would be in the vanilla game. While the general layout of the Ice Cavern is fairly friendly to our challenge, there are a lot of smaller platforming challenges and annoying enemies that will do their best to stop us. If you remember how annoying I said the fire geese were in Dodongo's Cavern, the ice geese are on a whole nother level. The worst room in the Ice Cavern, as you might expect, is the room with the push block puzzle. Luckily, this area is made much simpler by my favorite glitch. Bomb jumping makes this area much simpler. Bomb jump here, bomb jump there, and eventually you might have enough money to pay for rent for a day. That's a joke, chat. Well, let's move on to the next room. Melt the red ice and grab another fire for a free blue tunic a little bit later. The single white Wolfos is a complete pushover, just spin attack and grab the boots. Now I know it's tempting to play the Serenade of Water right away, but leave and unthaw the King Zora first for a free blue tunic. Finally, we're ready for the Water Temple. And I know you're thinking, Newbornkilik, how many years did the Water Temple take off of your life? And to that I would say, I'm wearing this hat for a reason. Now, right off the bat, things would get much worse in some ways and quite a bit better in others. This temple is the entire reason why roll turning is actually allowed in this challenge at all. There is no way to turn underwater aside from enemy turning, which actually ends up being much riskier underwater, meaning that roll turning will be our primary method of turning for any underwater sections. Just keep that in mind. First off, I decided to grab the compass, which would be useful for navigation. Getting there actually takes a little bit of thinking, mostly because of the really awkward collision on these spikes here and the annoying enemies in the area. Interestingly enough, I never knew these enemies were here. I usually just get this when the water is lower and these enemies are despawned. Getting the compass requires us to place a bomb and hurry to the chest, then allow the cutscene to turn us towards the chest. You'll notice that I'm bringing this mechanic up again. That's what we call foreshadowing. Finally, we can make our way to Princess Ruto, grab the map, and drain the water. Opening the door just below us is fairly trivial as long as we stand in front of the door and use Din's fire. The cutscene will turn us towards the door, allowing for easy access to the clam room and the first key. Use a bomb turn to push the red-ish block into the water, giving us access to the whirlpool room, which even with roll turns would end up being quite a pain. However, with some decent positioning and patience, you can beat the timer on the gate and grab the second key. Also chat, question of the day, if you could choose to be in one Zelda game, what would it be? Mine would likely be Twilight Princess, just because the citizens didn't even really know what was going on, they just get to live a peaceful life. Getting back on track, it's time to enter the structure in the middle with some bomb turning and raise the water, which is not at all free. This area is lined with spikes that, while in vanilla would pose very little issue, here they're nearly a death sentence to fall on, since we can't just turn around and grab the ledge again. The best way to turn on this thin platform would be roll turning, however, with such a thin platform, that's quite precise. Raise the water, and remember to grab the key below the platform that raises. Getting this next key is a pretty good time to bring up underwater combat. Naturally, the hookshot is our only weapon, and is quite punishing to miss with, something that you will be doing a lot. Luckily, the enemies in this area tend to hit you and drift back a little bit to reset. it. As long as you're careful, locking onto the clams isn't too big of a deal, just be sure not to be holding a direction while you are destroying them. While the water is set to the second level, remember to grab the key just below the map room. Now we're ready to set the water to the third floor and make our way into the waterfall room. This room can be a bit of a challenge, as it is a race against the falling pillars to the top, and the janky Z-locked aiming controls don't make that any easier. The next room with the raising and lowering dragon heads is quite a brain teaser. While the water in the room is lowered, we have no issue ledge grabbing and bomb turning to hit the switch. However, while the water is raised, we can no longer grab these ledges. Link will simply just fall in. This gives us a room that was almost made for the Z-lock challenge. Overall, ledge turning and bomb turning will get you most of the way through this area, right until the end where you have to hit the switch while on top of this structure here. This little platform presents quite a problem, and could have actually ruined the run, as we can't roll turn, bomb jump, or ledge grab. While theory crafting this challenge, this was one of the most difficult parts to get through. Luckily, during this run, we actually learned of a mechanic that we can use here. If you remember the forest temple, we learned about a special technique called spin turning. It's not efficient, it's not fun, but we can utilize spin turning in this room to save the run. Bars! Aside from the accidental rhyming when writing this script, Dark Link is another part in the run that the already heightened difficulty would spike quite dramatically. Without very good knowledge of this fight, it might actually be impossible. Most of the combat strategies that we've used so far are a complete waste of time. Dark Link will always try to get behind us, and this is an issue. Many people know of the hammer cheese for this fight, but getting the hammer will likely pose another potentially run-ending problem, so we have what we have to work with right now. Luckily, Dark Link's AI can actually be manipulated pretty hard. The best course of action would be to put ourselves in this corner here, use Din's fire for a few easy hits, then walk forward just a little bit, just enough to give Link enough space to get just outside of the camera area and throw a Deku Nut. Normally Dark Link would avoid the Deku Nuts, but for some reason he doesn't avoid them if he's just off screen. Eventually we're able to get enough hits that we can defeat Dark Link and obtain the hook shot. Moving on to what is likely the worst room in the temple, the snaky vortex room, or as I like to call it, the snaky sucky room. Never called it that before, but I am starting now. While in this room, the difficulty of the challenge will be cranked all the way to 11. One tactical failure later, and we'll use a glitch that allows us to get the heart piece on the lakeside laboratory for a quick health refill and a free piece of heart. With our hearts refilled, time to go back to the snaky sucky room. This room is just plain awful. Anything but a perfect angle here will likely result in Link sliding down the slopes here, and as you may have guessed, precision is pretty difficult here. One precise angle isn't that bad to obtain, but you need multiple precise angles here to complete this room, and it's just awful. With that said, it's the kind of awful that you get to bash your head against the wall again and again. The kind of awful that makes you want to put your fist through the television. With a little bit of jank, eventually we managed to make it to the final two platforms. However, this final platform was one of the areas that I was very worried about going into this challenge. But yet again, spin turning to the rescue. It's interesting that something we just picked up on this run is something that would go on to save the run in two different spots. We may have been able to figure out a way to complete the room before Dark Link without spin turning, but given how much space we have to work with, hitting this switch would likely be impossible without spin turning. After a lot of spin turning, we're able to hit the eye switch and are automatically rotated towards a small chest. Remember in episode 1 how I said that would be vital to the run? This is why. This part would be completely impossible without this small mechanic. And finally, everything is coming together. You love to see it. After that, there isn't too much that could stand in the way of the boss, right? Well, actually, no. Remember, we're still in the water temple. This place is so disliked for a reason. I'll go ahead and speed through most of it for you, but just know that things were still pretty miserable to navigate. Push this weird block out of the way for the final key in the temple. The room with all of the stingers is kind of a pain because they tend to hit you from off screen, but it is pretty manageable. Find the boss key behind the rock waterfall area and warp out of the temple. Heading into the boss room, we are met with Morpha. Morpha tends to move around a lot and at first glance has plenty of chances to break Z-Lock, so will this be a difficult fight? Well, I'm trying to find a way to make this exciting, but it just isn't. But wait, hold on. Let me YouTube this up for you. We enter the boss's chambers where the boss is meant to lurk. The room has fallen completely silent, save for the pitter-patter of water dripping in the corner. The air is thick with not only moisture, but unease. As you jump from platform to platform to the middle of the room, a swirling sound can be heard and you feel a presence behind you. It is Morpha. Morpha is a slow, tedious joke, and as anticlimactic as it would be to just stand in the corner and hope that Morpha gets within range of the long shot, that's the best strategy. Morpha has always had this corner weakness. If they made the arena just a little bit smaller, this fight could actually be quite engaging even in vanilla. But to be honest with you, I'm going to take any advantage that I can get in this challenge, which means oddly enough, Morpha is actually the simplest part of the water temple. Finally, we can obtain the water medallion and set our sights on the fire temple, which in the preliminary testing for this challenge proved to be nearly impassable in spots. I'm not kidding, by the way. The run could die here, but that, my friends, is a story for another time. All of these were filmed live over on twitch.tv/Newbornkilik, so if you're interested in the creative process, I would recommend checking that out. Anyway, I'm Newbornkilik, and I'll see you in the next Zlock challenge. I'm out.